Okay, thank you. Thanks, Emma. Very warm welcome to everyone here today to Aberdeen's IGB, and especially to our new members who are joining us for the first time today. For those of you who managed to attend the induction seminar, you will already know that this is an IGB which is focused on taking decisions which create a more sustainable system to get the best outcomes for the people of Aberdeen. We do recognise this is a complex agenda, and we want everyone to be supported in their positions on the IGB. So the Vice Chair and I and all the leadership team have an open door and encourage you all to get in touch if you have any questions regarding IGB business. We also have a programme of informal seminars arranged over the year, and we will also build in some open space at each of them to give time for you to raise questions or anything that's on your mind about IGB business. And a new thing we're introducing is you can also access an IGB buddy to help you in your IGB role. And I would encourage you to take this up. I think this will be an important way to build relationships and to get to know the IGB. So if you're interested in that, and that's open to anyone on the IGB, please get in touch with Emma Robertson to register your interest, and we will match people up. So today we have a full agenda, including the new strategic plan coming forward for approval. This plan comes to us today after a year of consultation, conversations and revisions, with really good engagement with the IGB throughout this process. And the plan has evolved now into the 3 versions that we have before us today. I want to commend the extensive consultation process that this strategic plan has gone through, particularly that our locality empowerment groups have been closely involved throughout the process. And I thank the team for all their work to date on this. Whilst in the world outside of health and care, Aberdeen feels in many ways back to normal. Very few people now wearing masks and the majority of restrictions lifted. However, within health and care, our teams across Aberdeen continue to work under significant pressure. Now, of course, many of these pressures were present before COVID, but they have been absolutely exacerbated by the pandemic. However, with the strategic and delivery plan before us today, the way forward will be agreed. And it's important that we pause, reflect, and approach the future with renewed hope. And I believe the papers before us today start us on that journey of looking forward, proud of what has been achieved in such difficult times, and really hopeful for a positive future for the people of Aberdeen. There is a lot on the agenda today, and I will do my best to ensure we give sufficient time for each topic. I would ask, though, if you have a lot of questions on a topic which are maybe around detail, I'll encourage you to follow up with the report author, and that'll help us keep on track in the meeting today and ensure we get through all the business that we have to focus on. And what I'll try and do with the discussions is focus our discussions on the recommendations that we're being asked to approve for each report. Now, being on Teams is quite intense, so I'll ensure that we have a break at about 11:30. Emma will give me a bit of a nudge when we're at an appropriate point in the agenda to stop for a little break then. The meeting today is scheduled for up until 2 p.m, but I will aim to finish before this time if we can, but we'll take stock of where we are around midday. Gosh, I was going to say midnight, around midday, and see if we need a further comfort break. So before we move to the agenda and before we do our introductions, just a couple of other things I'd want to mention at the start of this meeting. Firstly, to say Alex Stephen will be taken up post as Finance Director at NHS Grampian. Alex Stephen is not here today, but I'd like to ensure we formally record our thanks and appreciation to Alec for his work as IGB's Chief Finance Officer and Deputy Chief Officer over the past 6 years. He has done a really excellent job, and he will be missed by us, but we look forward to working with Alec in his new role. Recruitment is now underway for a new Chief Finance Officer, with interviews taking place next week. The final point I would want to highlight today is you will be aware that Dr. Howard Gemmell, Aberdeen former service user IGB representative, passed away on the 24th of May. Howard was a kind, gentle and fair person with huge experience, and was committed to ensuring real people's experiences are included in IJB decision making. His contributions enriched our IJB discussions and helped set the tone for the board culture that we have today. I would like to formally record our appreciation of Howard's contribution to Aberdeen IJB and send our condolences to Howard's family. Thank you. So, as I said at the start there, before we get on to business, I'm just going to take a few minutes for everyone on the call to introduce themselves and their role here on the IJB today. Please note, just for people who are new, that I ask if you're comfortable, keep your cameras on. If you like to do that, I like to see faces, and that helps me chair the meeting, but obviously keep your mics on mute unless you're speaking. So we'll now go to intros. I will do this just as I'm seeing people's names alphabetically. So I've got Alison MacLeod first.
Morning, I'm Alison MacLeod and I'm lead for strategy and transformation within the partnership.
Thanks, Alison. Alison Murray.
Hi, I'm Alison Murray and I'm one of the two care representatives on the board.
Thanks, Alison. Ali Palin.
Hi there, I'm one of the new senior project managers within the Health and Social Care Partnership in Aberdeen.
Thanks, Ali. Welcome.
Thank you.
Amy Richard.
Morning, I'm Amy Richard. I'm also a senior project manager with the Partnership for Strategy. I also wanted to introduce Frida Burnett, as she's supporting me with some work from Test and Protect at the moment.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks. Hi, Frida. Angela Scott.
Angela Scott, Chief Executive, Aberdeen City Council.
Thanks, Angela. Caroline Howarth.
Morning, everyone. I'm Caroline Howarth, and I'm Clinical Director for Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thank you, Caroline. Christian Allard.
Good morning, I'm Christian Allard. I'm Aberdeen City Council Councillor for Tory and Fairhill.
Welcome, Christian. Claire Wilson.
Morning, I'm Claire Wilson. I'm the lead for adult social work in the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thanks, Claire. Debbie Grant.
Morning, everyone. I'm Debbie Grant. I'm the trainee solicitor within the Regulatory and Compliance legal team.
Welcome, Debbie. Dina Tissera.
Good morning, everyone. I am the Aberdeen City Council Labour Councillor for Hilton, Woodside and Stockertoe.
Welcome, Dina. Emma King.
Good morning, I'm Emma King. I'm the Primary Care Lead for Aberdeen City.
Thank you, Emma. Emma Robertson.
Good morning, I'm Emma Robertson, Committee Services Officer for Aberdeen City Council and Clerk to IJB.
Thank you, Emma. Fiona Mitchell-Hill.
Morning, everyone. I'm Fiona. I'm the lead nurse in the partnership.
Thank you, Fiona. I think we've got Frida as well, Frida Burnett.
I was introduced with Amy, sorry. I'm from Meaningful Work from Test and Protect.
Thanks, Frida. Nice to see you. Gail Beattie.
Hi there. Unfortunately, my camera is not working, but I am Gail Beattie. I'm Director of Commissioning from Aberdeen City Council.
Thanks, Gail. Welcome. Graham Simpson.
Morning, I'm James Simpson. I'm Chief Social Work Officer for Aberdeen City Council.
Thank you, Graham. Graham Lawther.
Morning, everyone. I've got a dodgy camera as well. I handle communications for the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thanks, Graham. Nice to hear your voice. James Maitland.
Morning, everyone. I'm James Maitland. I'm Transformation Programme Manager for the Partnership.
Thank you, James. Jane Fletcher.
Good morning, I'm Jane Fletcher. I am lead for Mental Health and Learning Disability, Inpatient Services, Specialist Services and CAMS.
Thanks, Jane. Jason Nichol.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Nichol. I'm Head of Service for the Specialist Older Adults and Rehab Service, part of the leadership team of the Partnership.
Thanks, Jason. Jenny Gibb.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Gibb. I'm the Professional Nurse Advisor on the IJB.
Thanks, Jenny. Jess Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jess Anderson. I'm one of the legal advisors to the IGB.
Thank you, Jess. Jim Curry.
Yeah, morning. I'm Jim Curry, branch chair of Unison at the City Council.
Thanks, Jim. John Cook.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor John Cook, one of the council nominees on the IJB.
Thanks, John. John Forsyth.
Morning, everybody. I'm John Forsyth. I'm another one of the legal advisors to the IGB.
Thanks, John. Kim Cruttenden.
Morning, everyone. There are lots of J's. I've had my finger on the trigger for ages. I'm Kim Cruttenden. I'm chair of the Area Clinical Forum, which makes me a non-exec member of the NHS Grampian Board, and in turn, then I'm a member of the IGB with my NHS executive role. If that makes sense. Does that make sense, Leanne?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Thank you, Kim. Lee Fairfall.
Morning, everyone. My name's Lee Fairfall and I am the Torrey Ferry Hill councillor.
Welcome, Lee. Thank you. Lynn Morrison.
Morning, everyone. I'm Lynn Morrison. I'm the lead for the Allied Health Professions in the partnership.
Thanks, Lynn. Martin Allen.
Morning, I'm Martin Allen. I'm business manager in the partnership.
Thanks, Martin. Martin Gregg.
Good morning, Martin Gregg. I am a member of Aberdeen City Council.
Welcome, Martin. Mike Adams.
Hi, Mike Adams. I am a full-time partnership rep with NHS Grampian.
Thanks, Mike. Neil Stevenson.
Good morning. I'm the strategic procurement manager. So I manage the social care team and we support the partnership with all contracts.
Thanks, Neil. Phil Mackey.
Thanks very much. Phil Mackey, I'm a consultant in public health with NHS Grampian, and subject to the endorsement of the IJB, I will be your new public health representative.
Thank you, Phil, and welcome. Sandra MacLeod.
Good morning, Sandra MacLeod, Chief Officer of Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. Nice to meet everyone.
Thanks, Sandra. Sandy Reid.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandy Reid. I'm the lead for people and organisation in the partnership. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Shona McFarlane.
Sorry, I'm also having a bit of trouble with my camera today. So I'm Shona McFarlane and I'm the other carer rep.
Thanks, Shona. Nice to see you. Simon Rayner.
Morning, I'm Simon Rayner. I'm the Alcohol and Drug Partnership Strategic Lead.
Thanks, Simon. Stella Evans.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stella Evans from Aberdeen City Council, currently seconded to provide comm support for the partnership.
Thanks, Stella. Stuart Lamberton.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stuart Lamberton. I am the Transformation Programme Manager for Strategy within the partnership part of Alison McLeod's team.
Thanks, Stuart. And Susie Downey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Downey, and I'm acting primary care lead for the partnership.
Thank you, Susie. Is there anyone on the call that I've missed or haven't introduced themselves? No, I'm not seeing anyone. Great. Well, thanks for doing that. I know it's taken a bit of time, but just important to get a flavour of who's around the call today. Lots of expertise from lots of different areas joining us today. So thank you for that. Emma, do we have apologies to note for today's meeting?
Yes, we have apologies from June Brown and Malcolm Metcalf. And joining us a bit later will be John Tomlinson and Maggie Hepburn.
Okay, thank you, Emma. That's great. So we'll now move on to business, starting with the important item for today, which is IJB membership post-local elections. Who is introducing this paper for us today?
That's myself, Chair.
Emma, yeah. Okay. Anything you want to say by way of introduction, Emma, to this one?
Just to say that this is following the local government elections on the 5th of May. The report is to advise the board of the requirement to appoint Aberdeen City Council committee members to the Integration Joint Board, to Risk Audit and Performance Committee and Clinical and Care Governance Committee, and also to appoint a chairperson to the Clinical and Care Governance Committee. There are also 2 recent NHS vacancies of 1 voting member and 1 non-voting member whose replacements on the IGB are to be approved. And the recommendations are stated at 2.1 of the report.
Thank you, Emma. Before we move to agree the recommendations, does anyone have any questions or anything anyone wants clarified? No. There was one addition, Emma, that we wanted to bring to the attention of the IGB today, and that was to agree for myself to swap, to go on to move from the RAPC committee and to be appointed to Clinical Care Governance Committee, and to agree to appoint June Brown to Clinical Care Governance Committee. No, to RAP, sorry, to RAP, so that we have an NHS balance on both of the committees, if people are agreeable to that as well. That just gives us balance. So I'm not seeing any questions. So I think if we go to recommendations, I will read these out because I think they are important. I'm not going to read out all the recommendations for every report today, but it is recommended that we endorse the 4 ACC voting members, Councillors Cook, Allard, Gregg and Tissera, with Councillors Fairful, Van Sweden and MacDonald as substitutes to the IGB. So we're all happy with that. That's great. We endorse the appointment of Councillor John Cook as Vice Chair of the IGB, which we're happy with that. That's good. We endorse the appointment of June Brown as NHS Grampian voting member and Phil Mackey as member of the IGB. Thank you. We agree recommendation as described at 3.9 and appoint Councillors Cook and Gregg to Risk Audit and Performance Committee. And we agree recommendations 3.9 and appoint Councillors Allard and Tissera as voting members to the Clinical Care Governance Committee. Okay, we agree recommendation 3.8 to appoint Councillor Allard as chairperson of the Clinical and Care Governance Committee. And final recommendations, we note the IGB meeting schedule. Okay, thank you. So now you're all officially appointed, and that's the formal bit done. So that's fantastic. Welcome to you all. Great. Okay, now we'll move on to other parts of the agenda. So the first thing is to ask if any members here today have any declarations of interest or transparency statements that they want to make the IGB aware of in respect of the business before us today. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we have no declarations of interest or transparency statements today. Okay, 3.1 is consideration of exempt business. Emma, could you outline the items that we may want to consider as exempt business today?
Thank you, Chair. Under Standing Order 28.2, the IGB are being asked to consider items 6.1, 6.3 and 7.1 in private, as they contain exempt information as described in paragraphs 6 and 9 of the Access to Information Act, which relates to the financial or business affairs of a particular person.
Okay, thank you. I would say to everyone, for items 6.3 and 7.1, there's only some parts that are exempt, and I'd be keen that we have as much of our discussion as possible in public and only go into private if we need to talk about the financial aspects of those reports. But are the board content to proceed on that basis? Yeah, I'm seeing folk none. Okay, so we'll agree that those parts as exempt business. So now on to our video presentation. So for new members, this is something we like to start the IGB with something that just warms us up to the agenda. Usually have a short video just on something that's relevant to our topic. Considering we're considering our IGB strategy today, it felt appropriate to show a short video on NHS Grampian's new strategy, which was approved by the NHS Grampian board last week. And I hope that you'll get a sense of the clear alignment with both what NHS Grampian are doing for the future and our own strategic plan for Aberdeen Health and Social Care Partnership. So Emma, hope the technology works. Over to you to press play on this one.
We're now at the stage where we're ready to share our plan for the future. We feel confident that it turns what we've heard, what we've listened to, and what we've worked on into clear intention for NHS Grampian. This is a historic moment for us and for the future of health and social care in our area. One of the things we've all toiled with over many years and in developing our new plan has been the traditional tension between enabling wellness whilst responding to illness. Previously, we've often had the idea that one of these things is good and one of them's bad, and that's resulted in natural swings from one side of the pendulum to the other. So just how do we make positive steps for a different future? Our new approach is to create a real sense of balance between the two ends of this spectrum. They're both crucial to us going forward if we're to succeed, and if we don't have them both working in balance, we won't make progress in the way that we want to. That's why throughout the plan for the future, there's a constant balance between the idea of responding to illness and the delivery of services. And this is interwoven positively to impact on the population of our health. We want vibrant, flourishing communities. If you ask me what keeps me awake at night, then it's a sense that we have a system that's not sustainable. That's why at the heart of the plan for the future, we need to create a sustainable system for the next decade. We've received a huge number of inputs from our stakeholders, and everyone agrees what we've put in place is absolutely critical. And we're going to think about people, place, and pathways. Three very simple things that underlie all that we wish to do. Now, each of these is now going to be expanded on by one of the members of the Chief Executive team.
The first element of our strategic intent as we plan for the future has to be people. We need to have a different conversation and relationship with the people of Grampian and our colleagues to ensure sustainability whilst also meeting the needs of the population. To live in a fair and vibrant society where individuals are not left behind but flourish, we intend to focus on improvements for all citizens, joining with them in partnership, not only to improve population health, but also to reduce inequalities and ensure timely access to healthcare when needed. Children and our colleagues will also have a specific focus. By giving children in their early developmental years the best start, we help to create healthier, happier adults and families. That's going to be huge if we hope to reverse the increasing trends in inequalities, healthy life years lost, life expectancy, and healthcare consumption. We also recognise the significant pressures our colleagues continue to face and the resulting disconnection, uncertainty, and challenges this has created, particularly over the last 2 years. It is essential that we focus on improving our colleagues' experience because a valued, empowered, and thriving workforce will create and lead the innovation that our communities need and that our colleagues richly deserve. That is a key commitment in the plan for the future.
The second element is about places with 3 focus areas: an anchor organisation, our communities and the green agenda. Each of these is linked by our commitment to becoming a more mindful and deliberate partner, working with others to achieve sustainable change for our communities. NHS Grampian is an anchor organisation with special responsibilities in our communities because we are a large organisation with significant spending power and economic impact. We are one of the biggest employers in the northeast of Scotland. We have a footprint in every community, and a large proportion of people who live in Grampian interact with us. We are trusted as a brand, as professionals and as people. And we will use these characteristics and the reach and influence they give us to make a real difference, particularly through our power as an employer, making efforts to attract, train and recruit people from communities that need well-paid, skilled, sustainable jobs. Through our purchasing and procurement power, choosing to purchase goods and services from local businesses to support the North East economy. By opening up our buildings and facilities for communities to use. People looking for and caring for each other is a building block towards resilient, healthy communities. With our communities, we work alongside our partners to ensure that the remarkable community and neighbourhood work to support each other during the pandemic continues in the future. We will be an active and committed partner in community development and planning to integrate the work already being done to support communities to thrive. The third priority is a commitment to becoming leaders in sustainability, to reducing our impact on the environment. We have a legislative and moral requirement to deliver a net zero carbon service across our infrastructure. This requires emphasis not just on buildings, but on reducing, reusing and recycling. Our travel policies, healthcare practices, use of buildings and supporting change in communities are all part of the bigger shift towards sustainability.
Now, the final element is about creating pathways of care, which are responsive and adaptable so that they can truly meet individual people's needs. Care is currently too fragmented. People don't know how to navigate it or which way to turn, and is often difficult to access in a timely manner. We need to create care pathways that are empowering, built with and around people and families, ensuring people are truly partners in their care. We want to use every opportunity for prevention in all of our pathways, whether that's in primary, secondary or any other of care delivery. We must deliver real opportunities for people to improve their physical, mental, emotional and spiritual health and well-being. Ultimately, we want our pathways to enable our population to live healthier, longer lives. We know that access to services is now a bigger issue than ever before, and far too many people are waiting far too long for the care they need. This plan sets out our clear intent to create new, working pathways that are quick, simple and efficient. People should be able to access the right care at the right time, delivered by the right people. It must also be delivered safely and in a way that prevents avoidable harm. To ensure the care we provide is joined up and connected, again, our people are going to be vital. We need to work as a whole system, keeping people at the centre of everything and not letting traditional boundaries get in the way. Unacceptable and avoidable differences in healthcare systems simply must be minimised if we are to make progress. As we move forwards, real consideration must be given to individual circumstances, even beyond a person's healthcare needs. And that'll be done by working with our partners to provide a proper holistic approach.
We hope you found this brief introduction to NHS Grampion's plan for the future and our fresh approach to people, places and pathways inspiring and want to explore the details further. We're really excited about the opportunities it presents. There's no doubt this is a challenging time and there's loads of work to do to turn our strategic intent into reality. We know actions speak louder than words, which is why work starts now to put in place realistic, achievable, but appropriately ambitious implementation phases for each of the priorities in the plan. That's the critical next step on this journey. We will only be able to achieve these aspirations with your full support and by working together, united in our vision and intent. Whether you work in health and social care for one of our partner agencies or are a member of one of the diverse communities we serve, I hope you will join us on this journey and grasp the huge opportunity this is to create the health and social care system in Grampian that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. That was great that worked. So when we show a video that at the start, it's not for particularly for having questions on it. It's just for awareness, and we'll hold the questions on strategy to focus on the IGB strategy that's before us today. But certainly the NHS Grampian plan for the future very much connects with what we are doing as a partnership, and it's great. I think we can all agree that great to hear that clarity on people, places and pathways, and working as a whole system, which I think we've been doing very well as a partnership over the last few years. So we'll move on from that as an opener to just go over the minutes of the last board meeting, which was on the 10th of March. Firstly, for consideration of accuracy for people who were there. Are people content with that minute of the 10th of March as an accurate record of the meeting? I'm not seeing any hands being raised. Okay, so we'll take that as an accurate record of that meeting. Are there any matters arising that anyone would like to highlight today? No. Okay. Okay, so no matters to highlight, and we're content with that as an accurate record of the meeting. Thank you. So now on to 4.3, which is the draft minute of the Risk Audit and Performance Committee. John Tomlinson's joining us later, a bit later this morning, but just wanted to highlight that annually the committee overviews the governance arrangements, and items 7, 8 and 9 on the minute demonstrate the assurance that we've received on that, which he is content with. And John just wanted to ask as well if we knew when we were going to be getting the audited accounts to the IJB, because that was an item we discussed, the unaudited accounts at the wrap. Sandra, I don't know if you're able to provide a date or timeline for the audited accounts. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. So my understanding it will be the end of September, and you'll either go directly to the IJB or to wrap, depending on the date, but there's no fixed date as there. But what I would say is I've had assurance from Alex, as our current CFO, that he will be staying close even with our new CFO until that's sort of across the line, so we'll be getting supported with that.
Thanks, Sandra, that's helpful. Does anyone have any questions on those draft minutes that anyone else wants to raise? We're content to note them. Okay, happy to note them. Then 4.4 is the draft minute of Clinical and Care Governance Committee of the 19th of April. For new members, for awareness, the committees always consider items that we wish to escalate to the IJB. So if there's particularly fantastic practice or any areas that we're concerned or we're not assured about, we would escalate that to the IJB. There are no items from the Clinical and Care Governance Committee that have been escalated. I did want the board to be aware of a couple of things that we discussed though at the Clinical Care Governance Committee. One was that we received a report and a detailed action plan on childhood vaccinations, which we gave due scrutiny at that meeting. And we will have an annual update on that as part of our overall vaccination annual report. And secondly, for the IJB to note that we heard that there was real pressure on sexual health services that was being reported to the Clinical Care Governance Committee, and that we have asked for a follow-up report on GP provision around sexual health services to be provided to see if that pressure can be alleviated a bit by GP provision. I don't know if anybody wants to come in on that, but I felt that was important. Although we were not escalating it, I think it was important that IJB members were aware. Sandy, did you want to come in on that point at all?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe just a couple of things. I think it's something approaching a 70% increase in activity that you've described, that connected from the top of my head. So that's very significant. And I suppose the other thing probably just to be aware of as part of the kind of wider health and social care system, Sexual Health Service is currently having to plan and do a lot of preparations for potentially monkeypox coming to Aberdeen / Grampian in the Sexual Health Service. And again, that is a significant drain on existing staff. So both, although they're two separate things, they give a kind of indication of significant additional pressure on a reducing staff group because it's so difficult to recruit everybody. So we'll come back. Thank you, Luann, with a kind of formal paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. That's helpful. Okay. Any questions from anyone on what you've heard so far? Or are we happy to note that paper, that minute? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If we go now to 4.5 then, which is the business planner. Now, I would normally hand to Alec now, but he's not here today. So who's talking to this paper? Is it Martin?
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
take it, Chair. So just let me bring it up. Yeah, so just to explain to members of the business planner, the first few lines of the business planner indicate the items which the IJB have in front of them today. So moving down to line, I think it's 15. No, sorry, 16 on the planner. It's a 2C update workshop, so that workshop's been arranged for July. Similarly, there's a workshop planned for risk in August, and it's planned that the Strategic Risk Register would come back to the IJB at its meeting in August. Sandra's updated in terms of the audit accounts, which is line 19, so we can get that updated based on that update. And the rest of the business planner members will see will have either a D, a T or an R beside them, the D for delayed or deferred. So there's a number that are suggested would be deferred to the August IJB meeting. T is for transfers, so that'd be transferred potentially to one of the IJB committees. And R is recommended for removal. There's a couple of duplicate items in there. So that's the June planner. Moving on to the August one, obviously we will get that updated based on the decisions of the IJB to defer items from today to August. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. We'll open that up. Martin Gregg.
Yeah, thanks. On line 22 is Rosewell House. That appears to be a deferral. Is that just because of the volume of business on today's meeting? So will that progress report come to the next? Will that come to the August meeting?
Yeah, that's my understanding. It will be on the agenda for the August meeting.
Right. So it's not a case of the work being deferred, of the work itself being deferred, just the report on the work being deferred. Is that correct?
Yeah, the work is ongoing, but the report will come to the board in August.
Great, thank you.
Sandra, did you want to come in? No.
No, it's okay. Sorry.
Okay. Is there someone else with their hand up?
Me.
Sorry, I can't see who the other person is.
It's Alice. Me,
Alice.
Alice.
Yes, come on in, Alison.
Yes, it was really just to. I know Alison McLeod will know this because I've spoken to her about it, but the disappointment about the delay again to the carers strategy. I just think as a carers rep, I need to just have that recorded that I'm disappointed that it is going to be delayed again now till October. I understand where we are and how we've got to it because I've been speaking to the officers about it all behind the scenes, but I think it would be remiss of me not to express a disappointment about that. That was line 26.
Yes. Thank you, Alison. We can note that in the minutes. I'm pleased to hear that you're around all those discussions though. And I don't know if Alison McLeod wants to come in and talk a little bit about what the plan is over the next few months so that by October we have a really appropriate strategy in place for our carers. Alison, do you want to come in and just outline what's planned over the next few months and why that's really an important piece of work for us?
Yeah, absolutely, Luann. I can do that. So we resurrected the Carers Strategy Implementation Group meetings last October, and we've really been working away since then, meeting on a monthly basis to determine all the work that we need to do to undertake the revision of the existing carer strategy, taking into account obviously the impact of COVID. So we discussed as a carer strategy implementation group the timing, all that we needed to do, and we looked at 3 options for bringing the carer strategy forward for approval. The first option, the first achievable option, was the end of August, but we also considered October and November, and the collective agreement of the group was that there was too much work to be done to bring a comprehensive strategy back at the end of August, and that pushing it out to October made it more doable, and that we were confident that we would be able to deliver a fully revised strategy which takes account of carers' views by that point. So we have had an initial workshop. There are further workshops planned, and the group continues to meet on a monthly basis, and that work continues to progress. So I'm very confident that we will meet the October deadline.
Thanks, Alison. Helpful to hear that, and yeah, such an important area for us. So it's important we do it right and make sure that our carers can be involved. And I suppose I'm thinking as well of over the summer that might be harder for people. So yeah, welcome the clarity on that new timeline. Thank you, and we'll absolutely note that in the minute. Alison Murray as well. Too many Alisons on my screen. No, never too many Alisons. Shouldn't say that. Anything else on the business planner that anyone wants to ask about or comment on today? I'm not seeing any hands up. So if we're content, then we'll get those revisions made, Martin, and we'll continue to review the business planner at each IGB meeting as part of our standing items. Thank you, Martin. That's great. Now moving on to 4.6 is the Chief Officer's report. Sandra, I don't know if you want to say any words of intro or just happy to take questions from people.
Just a few words. Thank you, Chair. So just to say for new members, the Chief Officer's report is a standing item. It's just really classed as a high-level summary of any local, regional and national issues just that are there, just to give IGB members some context of anything that's happening there. So the report before you is just for noting, but also happy to take any questions at all on the content. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. I'll open that up. Martin Gregg.
Yeah, thanks. Since I've been given the opportunity, I wanted to ask about 3.3, the National Updates National Care Service. Where will that be reported? Where will we get more information in the course of the IGB on that issue? Just that I'm new, it would be useful just to know about that important strand of work.
Will I come back?
To come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chip. So there'll be several options. There will be updates through the Chief Officer's report if there's broad context that's there, but if there are any major changes, such as the new government, as the legislation and things changes, we will prepare reports, and those would go through either risk and audit or formally to the IGB, depending on what the impact of that is.
Okay.
Not sure if anybody wants to add to that.
Okay. Thank you.
And it is a standing item, isn't it, on your Chief Officer's report? Just even if there's nothing significant, there will be an update in every Chief Officer's report. Okay. Martin, do you want to come back on that? Are you happy with that?
No, that's fine, thank you. I mean, it's going to be quite a considerable impact, and I imagine that many aspects of the IGB work will reflect this piece of government work coming through. It just that's stood out for me. So thanks for the information. It's much appreciated.
Thanks, Martin. I see Angela's hands up. Angela, did you want to come in on this point, or is it something different?
Just on this point, if I may, Luann, thank you. Yeah. Just to add to Sandra's comment, Councillor Gregg, obviously the government will come out for consultation on its draft bill. We're expecting that pre the summer recess. I would expect the partnership will do a formal response to the consultation, as will Aberdeen City Council, as I'm sure NHS Grampian will as well. And again, we will ensure that there's a coordination of those responses. So members of the board will, you'll get to see obviously the partnerships response, and you will get to see Aberdeen City Council's response to that. We await clarity on whether the government intention is to move towards regional boards as distinct from at the moment we've got 3 IGBs within Grampian. Subject to that decision, then I think we will have programme structures in place that will either support the move to a regional model, or will be managing the transition within the city. And so again, I think those programme structures, Sandra will report back to the board on how we're managing that, whether it needs to be coordinated. COG, which is the Chief Officer Group, which carries the statutory responsibility for all the public protection duties. And again, the proposals, the government's consultation proposed that formally adult support and protection and child protection would transfer over into the new arrangements. Again, until we see the bill, we don't know if that'll definitely take place. But COG is already, I chair for new members, I chair the city's COG, and COG's already started to do some thinking and work around what would be required to manage the transfer of all of those public protection duties as well. And again, the draft consultation proposed that drug and alcohol services and community justice, and Councillor Gregg, you'll recall that community justice currently was transferred previously over into community planning partnerships. So if the draft bill proposes that community justice transfers, then that's another area of business that we've to transfer. So you're right in the sense that this is a significant reform, and I think we will definitely be keeping it on formally on the business of the board, both in terms of the consultation to the primary legislation. We do expect there'll be further secondary legislation, so I think we can certainly expect a raft of consultation and formal responses for us to submit, which obviously you'll be fully cited on. And then when we've got the clarity, we will bring full work plans back. So I think Alison MacLeod, who's led the work on the strategic plan, has indicated, I think in Alison's cover report, that we would need to have a separate distinct work plan from the NCS. I think Alison was quite right to focus on the transformation agenda within the strategic plan, but we're not blind to the extent of work that would be required to manage the transfer. And again, conscious of for employee director colleagues and trade union colleagues, again, there's not clarity yet on whether the new arrangements will be employing bodies, whether they'll hold contracts and assets. Within the original consultation, there was a suggestion. So again, I think it's incumbent, Luann, that we keep trade union and employee director colleagues sort of well cited on this arrangement as well. But a lot of discussion already underway for what would be a sizable reform, and the intention would be to bring a full work plan back in due course if the board would find that helpful. Thanks, Luann.
Thanks, Angela. That's helpful. But Martin, you're right to raise it. It's significant and it's in our sights, absolutely. OK, I'll move on to John Cook, Vice Chair. In you come, John.
Thanks, Luann. Yeah, it was just a brief comment, particularly for new members. The item on staff well-being is also a recurring thing in the Chief Officer's report. And I think that's really, really important because I think, Luann, in your introduction, you mentioned the pressure that folk are under. There was reference to it in the NHS Grampian video, and we've had historically problems in recruiting staff to the northeast of Scotland, and therefore it's really important that we look after the mental health and well-being of the staff we've got, so that we retain them. And because if we don't look after their mental health and well-being, if you need care and the person who should be delivering it is off with stress, which given the sorts of jobs they do, wouldn't be a huge surprise. It's just a really important thing to do. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of that.
Yeah, thanks, John. Totally agree with you there. I think we all agree with that. We have to look after our staff. Yeah, and we will have a report on workforce coming either in August or October hopefully in August. I see Mike's hands up, so we'll bring in Mike.
Thanks, Luann. Thanks for that bit, John, because that gives me my end for this. You would expect. So the big bit and the biggest challenge that the board has is making sure that the well-being, etc., within that is real and not just rhetoric. Because that is the danger with the pressures that they themselves are under and other organisations are under, because we have over the last 2 years moved now to Sandy's delight, to hybrid working, etc., or the discussions on how to do that. We have got a massive piece of work to be able to do that safely. And by safely, I mean while looking after the well-being of staff's mental and physical health. It's still commonplace to be getting emails, or you can check emails and see that they were sent at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, that's not acceptable. And it sets a bad example, I'll be quite honest, because staff further down the chain feel they have to do the same. So for me, that is one of the biggest bits, and that's about the retention bit, John. The recruitment bit is a massive problem. Our Scotland, especially in certain professions, certainly in our nursing colleagues and our AHPs, the difficulty in recruiting is not going to go away. So there are loads of talks to go on about how we deliver services, and the public expectation needs to be managed on if we can actually deliver, because that in itself is putting a pressure on the staff. And we also need to keep in mind that it means all staff, so not just for everybody sees, which is the front-facing clinical staff, but everybody else that keeps it going, and that includes members of this board, etc., because that's our part and parcel of the system, and it's the health system it needs to be looked after. So yeah, that's my rant for today so far.
Thanks, Mike, and you do make very important points, and good to get that reminder that it's everyone's well-being and how you. It's walking the walk, isn't it? Not just saying things, but actually looking after your own well-being is really important, to encourage others to do the same. Angela.
Luann, thank you for letting me back in. I forgot to just update the board. Following the Feely review and then the move to the government's consultation on National Care Service, there was an acknowledgement, I think, on the part of both the Scottish Government and COSLA that there were areas of Feely which could be progressed independently of primary legislation, and they didn't require legislation. One of the key bits, Mike's point is about workforce, but there's a whole load of other areas as well, including ethical commission, which was covered in the Feely. So COSLA and Scottish Government signed up to a statement of intent, and there's a programme of work that's sitting underneath that. A number of colleagues who are in the meeting today are using their professional structures in order to ask the question, how do local boards keep briefed on the statement of intent work programme, because there's a number of areas that are being progressed at a national level. So we haven't got a resolution to that, and perhaps Luann and Councillor Cook in your membership of the National Chairs Group, that might be an area that you can prod, because I think that as colleagues like Alison and Sandra progress the strategic plan, there's also going to be an ask around supporting that statement of intent programme, as well as preparing for the primary legislation when it comes forward. So we hope to be in a position where nationally there is a programme board already in place, I understand, but that they can produce a programme update that can be shared with local systems, so everybody understands the attempts to resolve some of the pressures that Mike was describing already in terms of workforce, but how we progress some of the other areas in Feely that didn't require legislation. So it remains outstanding, Luann, for us to get the formal confirmation that we can get a report from the National Programme Board and bring that into local IGBs. But once we get resolution to that, the intention would certainly to share that with the board in due course, Luann. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And I think there's a national chairs and vice chairs meeting later this month, so I'm sure National Care Service will be at the centre of it, but we can absolutely raise any questions that we want to locally. And John, I'll need to make sure you have the date for that, because I saw it in my calendar just yesterday. So we're absolutely engaged in the national discussions as well. Thanks. Martin, your hand's still up. Was that from your previous question, or are you wanting to come back in? No. Okay, that's it down now. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions or comments on the Chief Officer's report, so we'll note that report and move on now to item 4.7, which is the strategic plan. If I could play the trumpet, I would probably, this would be the time to go to play the trumpet and do a fanfare, but I'm going to hand over to Alison, since I'm not musical, to allow you to introduce the strategic plan for us today. Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Luann. I thought you were going to ask me to sing there, but there we go. So I won't do that. But yes, I am very pleased to be here today presenting the strategic plan. You have in front of you the plan for approval. There are 3 versions of the plan: a summary version, which was designed with our communities, a full version with a detailed delivery plan attached. And you'll note that this has now been designed by colleagues in the Aberdeen City Council design team who helped us with that. And that design will follow through into the summary version. We didn't have time to get the summary version designed in the same way for today's meeting, but that will happen. In fact, it's happening as we speak. There is also an easy read version, and that version will stay exactly as it is. It's been designed specifically by colleagues who can or who have knowledge as to what helps some people to be able to read and understand the information. We're also developing a short animation. It's something that can be used for any of our audiences of the strategic plan to get the message across in about 1.5 to 2 minutes, just with the really high level key messages. And we'll be using that when we launch the strategic plan. Also in your pack, you now have the health inequality impact assessment that was used as we developed the strategic plan, and that pointed us in the direction of some of the key groups that we had to consult with in terms of ensuring that anything we did put in the strategic plan did not have a negative impact. So you're aware from the induction session that the plan was developed from a fairly comprehensive assessment of our current position and the strategic context, and also the data which indicates the changes that we can expect. The detailed delivery plan is our response to mitigate the challenges we face in relation to higher demand, greater impacts on inequality, and restricted resource to meet those challenges without changing the way that we do things. We present the plan in the knowledge that there is the proposal to implement a national care service, has already been discussed, and we don't want the preparations for that to distract us from delivering what we need to do, and that's the reason why you have the detailed, the full version and the detailed delivery plan there. The covering report details the development of the strategic plan, how it links to the medium-term financial framework, and the proposed arrangements for reporting progress. It also details some of the next steps in terms of formally publishing the plan and submitting it to our statutory and community planning partners for information. We also now need to update the housing contribution statement. We have referred to housing. We've tried to sprinkle that throughout our strategic plan because it's a key aspect of good health is the quality and location of housing. But we do have a separate housing contribution statement, and that will now be updated in light of the revised plan. So I think that's really all I want to say about the plan this morning. It's been a culmination of over a year worth of quite hard work to get it to this point, and there's a lot of information in there, so I'm sure folks will have some queries on some of the specifics. So I'm happy now to stop talking and hand over to others who may want to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I will just open that up now for comments or questions from people. IGB members who've been around a while will be familiar with how this has been developed, and we've had many touch points as this has been developed over the past year, but realise this is a brand new strategy for some folk today. Christian.
Yes, thanks very much. I just wanted to congratulate the way it's put forward in our papers, and particularly I would have to say that it's important that we have a strategic plan, but it's easy to read. So I really like this section, easy to read, and I would encourage anybody to think about people reading our papers. And it's so important that everybody can understand exactly where we're going, and taking out all acronyms and all the rest of it to make sure that people can understand in plain English and in not so many words. It's so important to understand the direction we are taking. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, it's really helpful to get that feedback from you as a new person, particularly. John Tomlinson.
Yeah, thank you, Luann. Yeah, well done to Alison and all of the team involved in that. I think it's a clear step change, taking things forward. And I know we've been part of the journey with that, but seeing it come together is really positive. It'd be good if you could say a little bit more about the joint work that you'll be doing with the community planning, the other relevant plans with the health board, etc., and obviously with the determinants of health being very wide and not just within health and care. So if you could say a little bit more about that. The other thing, so just as an example, on page 126, you've got there the developing hubs, and for better access, clear access. So there will be a need for clear messaging to the public about what to expect and how things can be reliable, accessible, because I know there's a lot of perceptions around. So that's an example of that joint work of how we put forward something that's aligned with what is happening elsewhere. So it'd be good if you can just say a bit more about how you see that developing going forward, please.
Thanks, John. So firstly, in terms of that joint planning, we have lots of links into our partners and beyond. We worked very closely initially, as you say, with our community planning partners and with Aberdeen City Council in terms of refreshing the local outcome improvement plan and developing the locality plans. And we also worked closely with our colleagues in NHS Grampian, developing, when they were beginning to develop their plan for the future that you saw in the video earlier this morning. We shared outputs from consultation exercises, and we used the relevant information to inform the development of our plan. But going forward, those links will continue to be close. we are in the process at the minute of developing, or contributing rather, to the 1-year delivery plan that NHS Grampian are required to submit, and having done all of the work on our own delivery plan, that has been relatively painless, because what we were able to do was just lift and lay some actions from our delivery plan into the integrated delivery plan that collectively the other health and social care partnerships and NHS Grampian are working on. We also have a 3-year delivery plan for NHS Grampian and our colleagues in the other partnerships to work on beyond that 1-year delivery plan. So the work that the joint work that we've done, and the delivery plan format has enabled us to link quite closely into that work, and I hope people can see the alignments, particularly with the LOIP and with NHS Grampian's plan for the future. Those of us who are working in that arena, in the planning arena, have regular meetings, and we discuss those read across and links, and using as much common language as we can, so that in the Grampian area folks can see that joint working. But that joint working extends into the operational, if you like. So we have close links with housing colleagues. We have our integration and housing meetings. We have our disabled adaptations group. So, you know, there's lots of operational ways that we link. It doesn't start and end with the strategic planning. You know, we work closely with colleagues in Aberdeen City Council on certain programmes. So we're working on the Community First programme at the minute. During the pandemic, we worked on Aberdeen Together. So we very much see ourselves as part of that wider whole system. We've built up lots of relationships, we've made lots of links. So when it comes to doing something, as you say, like the hubs that you mentioned, that are noted in the plan, all of that work it coalesces, if you like, into those operational activities, the relationships that we built up, the conversations that we've had, the links that we've made, that makes that the operationalizing, if that's a word, the on the ground, delivering services, joined up services to the people of Grampian, that makes it an awful lot easier.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Luann, and just on that point about public expectations or the messages to the public, are we going to get to a point where we have something quite simple and straightforward that we're saying collectively to the public of what's going to be different and better?
Yes, sorry, I forgot about that aspect of your question, John. Sorry, apologies. Absolutely, we have a commitment in our own strategic plan around about that consistent and regular messaging to the public, and we will be working with our colleagues across Grampian to ensure that messaging is consistent. Again, as I say, hopefully you saw from the video earlier on, a lot of the key messages that are being delivered there are, you know, resonate with what's in our strategic plan. So absolutely, we're not going to stop that collaborative working just because the strategic plans are finalised. That will continue, and we will ensure that messaging is consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John, for those questions. Mike.
Thanks. I'm just going to jump on the back of that for John there. So it was thank you once again, John, for an opening there. There are a couple of big concerns that are going to be, number one is that the public have got used to certain things and we were able to produce certain things because we had money thrown at us for the government for COVID. That's us stopping. The historical issues are coming back, and they are going to take a good while to even work out what they exactly are. So actually that message is going to change, John, over time, several times probably, and that's what I mean about trying to get the public expectation managed is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we will probably get. The good bit is within throughout the pandemic, that actually is improved beyond recognition, is the cooperation between health and social care partnership and the council. So the workings of that have the working together and the communication, as Alison was speaking about, has went on leaps and bounds. Still got work to do, but it is in a different universe than it used to be. But as I say, for me, the big concern is the historical issues are on their way back, coupled with things like our strategy is tied to hybrid working. We supplied all that IT equipment because we got extra money. How are we going to replace it when we need it? It's part of our strategy to keep folk working like that. How does it get paid for next time? When we have already got gaps in budgets that we're going to hate and manage. I'm not being doom and gloom, but I need to be realistic within this, or the challenges that we have got. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. You raise a very good point there, Mike, about the maintenance of IT that was invested heavily in at the start. I don't know if anyone in the team, or do you feel, Alison, that's in the strategy, it's in our medium-term financial planning, that we've got that recurring cost now to find?
So yeah, absolutely. We closely linked with our partners on that aspect as well. I mean, our staff are employed by either NHS Grampian or ACC, and therefore they receive their kit from both the organisation that employs them. And we have had conversations around about our need for that technology to be maintained, but again, that's another close link that we have with our partners. And although it's not explicit in our strategy, you know, technology is a key enabler for us, and we need to ensure that technology works not only for our clients and for our patients, but also for our staff.
Thanks, Alison. Sandra, did you want to come in on that and the points Mike's made as well? Yeah.
Yeah, please, Luann. I think just really a reflection on the decisions that the IGB has made previously. I think if we would reflect back over the past two years and the work and the investment the IGB has done within infrastructure, within our community nursing, health visiting, school nurses and community nurses and IT infrastructure, we do depend on and receive quite heavily from both our ACC and from NHS about our infrastructure there. But we're also very mindful of the differences that can make. And I think you're absolutely right, Mike, to say that there are areas whereby we've got long-standing problems and long-standing issues that are coming forward. That's absolutely clear. But we're also absolutely clear as a team, and will be clear when we come to ask the IGB to make decisions, that there is a requirement to make investments in that, and we will have some tough choices to make when the finances are there. So it is often the case of what is the benefit of the digital, what is the benefit of the hybrid working. And fundamentally, when we do have issues, we will have choices to make about how we're going to fund that and how we're going to be able to meet their efficiency. So I think you're right to raise it, Mike. I think the IGB has made decisions in the past, and we have used our budgets effectively when we've had to move that forward ourselves. And I would highlight the fact that it will be over the course of the next 3 years. Tough decisions will be required to be made, particularly against balance and finance.
Thanks, Sandra. And Mike's the wider point Mike was making also about the public and the public expectation, I think, is a really key one for us. Something that also came up in the seminar that we had, the induction seminar a few weeks ago, just that bringing the public with us, and people thinking things are temporary because of COVID that are now going to be permanent, and use of e-consultant and those type of things. And I think probably, yeah, it's maybe something that we need to come back to and look at a bit more the detail of that. It's maybe something John and I can speak with Sandra about, just to understand shared plan for that and the consistency of messaging, because it's going to be key, and we don't want our frontline staff who we have to protect their well-being. We want the public to understand why things are different, so that they're not having realistic expectations about what to expect as well. So something that we can take offline, because I think it's a huge issue, opportunity and risk for us as a partnership. So thank you, Mike, for raising those points. I will now move on. I see Alison Murray.
Hi, yes, I mean, it was just a couple of points. I mean, one was under our approach. I raised this at the workshop. I'm not sure if I was not sure if service users was the appropriate term. I mean, partly because it doesn't include necessary carers in and they need to be considered as well, and also because a lot of the strategy actually deals with people who might not be users, and if it's effective, hope won't be users, because if we're looking to improve health, they might not actually interact. My other point was actually under the health impact improvement assessment. Sorry, I forgot what all the I's are for. It was I spotted it under disability, but actually it's probably applies to the similarly to other ones. Is that under recommendations to reduce or enhance impact, it says we will continue to deliver services in response to assessed needs regardless of disability. My problem is in response to assessed need, because we actually have an anticipatory duty. We don't have, it shouldn't be just in response. We have to actually ensure that we think ahead of what might be needed. That's particularly a requirement of disability, to ensure that reasonable adjustments are put in place. But I actually have a slight problem with that phrasing in all of the protected characteristics, because I think sometimes in order to deliver equitable services, we have to consider what the protected characteristic is in order to address discrimination against those protected characteristics. So I just wasn't keen on the deliver services in response to assess need. I think it's something we need to think regardless of, in response to assess needs regardless of disability or something else, because I think those protected characteristics may have needs.
Thanks, Alison. Alison, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks, Luann. Firstly, just on that point around about the use of the word service users, we have tried throughout the plan to use service users, patients, carers, clients, have tried to use a variety of words. So apologies if there's one section that I've just referred to service users on. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of versions of the plan and a lot of words to write. So apologies if there is that one section that just refers to service users. But I think what we're trying to do is demonstrate that we deliver services to a range of people, and you're absolutely right. They're either using our services, or some of them are not using our services just now, but they might use them in future. And just in relation to the health inequality impact assessment, we are the structure of that it takes us through each of the protected characteristics and the human rights, etc., and asks us to consider specifically what impact each of those might have, or what impact developing our strategic plan might have on those protected characteristics. So what that phrase that I appreciate is used a lot, what that phrase was meant to indicate was that we don't, we consider the needs of the individual as opposed to necessarily looking at their disability or whatever. It's regardless of what condition or what protected characteristics an individual has, we look at what their health needs are and we deliver services in response to that. And absolutely, there is that preventative agenda as well, but we weren't asked to as part of the structure of the HIIA, it doesn't ask us to assess the preventative agenda. So I understand why the issues that you might have with the phrasing there, but I think that's perhaps more about the structure and questions within the HIIA rather than any intention on the Health and Social Care Partnerships part.
Yes, I didn't think it was an intention, but I wasn't sort of meaning to ascribe any ill sort of intent to it. It's more that there is a duty, particularly under disability, to have an anticipatory duty, and it doesn't actually suggest an anticipatory duty. And also, I think we've got part of looking at an impact assessment is to look at groups and what might impact on that group as a whole rather than just the individual. So I just think it to focus too much on the individual might be to ignore structural issues which affect the whole of that group, and which was what we're trying to consider. So that phrase seemed to focus too much on the individual and perhaps not enough consider structural issues in our provision which might affect that protected characteristic. And yes, and as I say, with disability in particular, there is this additional duty that we have in place. So yeah.
Thanks, Alison. I wondered if there could be a sort of footnote with the definition of what we mean when we say assessed need, because what I'm hearing from Alison MacLeod is it's not about the here and now, it's about a holistic view of how we support the person to be as well and live the best life they can, but it's just probably the words used that have different connotations. So would it be possible to put in just a definition, and then that would clarify, keep it short for what it needs to be, but give that clarity that it's just not about the here and now, but it's actually thinking of that holistic needs of the person and that anticipatory element for the future as well. I see Alison MacLeod nodding. Alison, would that be a helpful approach from your perspective, that we just clarify that that statement? So we're not talking about anticipatory only.
Yes, I think it might do a bit. It will get part way, but I think it perhaps doesn't still acknowledge what the point is to ensure there aren't any structural barriers in place for groups, and so I think it's that balance between considering the group and considering the individuals, but yeah. I'm yeah, just we'll go with that.
But perhaps Alison and I can have a discussion about this offline and agree what wording should go into the HIIA.
Yes, I mean, I think I can sort of see, and I can think it's what you're trying to say is very good. I just think it maybe misses out that structural element of which can produce a barrier for different protected characteristics, and I think to bring it down to the individual perhaps ignores bigger issues, but yes, I see what's trying to be said. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Alison, and yeah, it sounds like there's a bit of a conversation could be had offline to see if there's something that can just improve it slightly for the document, but yeah, absolutely note that the points that you're making. Thank you. Shona McFarlane.
Hi, thank you, Luan. Obviously, I'm coming in with the mental health angle regarding this piece. And, you know, most carers who are dealing with people or relatives that have a mental health problem will not even recognise that they come under that protected group. Because under the Equality Act of 2010, that's a condition that lasts for 12 months or longer and has a day-to-day impact on people's ability to live their normal life. Now, that would also encompass people with depression, anxiety, all sorts of issues that are surrounding, especially having gone through COVID. There was more stress put on the carers to basically look after people, and they are going to have a resultant mental health problem. I think you can see that by the stats, that there just isn't enough provision for that. So I think it really needs to be carefully drafted not to exclude people like that. And the other thing is, a lot of carers don't even realise that they have a mental health problem, because they're so used to just getting on with it and doing it and not complaining, that, you know, it will hit a crisis point, and, you know, it's not useful for any person to get led into that position, let's say. So it was just that point to make regarding the Equality Act. The other thing I would say is, with Quarriers as a first point of contact, they don't really have, there's not a lot of sight with Quarriers. At least BSA had an office within Cornwall Hospital. You know, that, you know, they had signs up and saying, you know, you may want to consider, you know, just dropping by and having a chat. There's nothing like that now. So it's like, where does the point of contact come for the carer who's looking after somebody with a mental health problem, who may indeed have a mental health problem themselves? There's not really that bridge between that and then them ultimately becoming unwell and having to seek psychiatric care themselves. So I just wanted to make that point with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Shona. And really important that we remember the mental health element of our strategy. So good that you've raised that. Alison, do you want to come back on Shona's points there?
Yeah, absolutely. Valid points from Shona there. And just as you were speaking, Shona, I think this is probably a conversation we can take into the development of the carer strategy. I think that's probably the best place to make sure we get these the needs of carers specified and a response to those needs. So not sure if we can take that into the carer strategy implementation group and the workshops that are planned over the next couple of months.
Sorry, can I just say something there, Alison? I'm actually part of a group that meet for bipolar patients, and some of the people that are coming through, it was actually parents of a child who used to disappear off, and she was just beside herself. So it then became a little bit of a service for the carer. And although it's open to carers, as is why I became a member, it's not really there for the carers, it's for the bipolar people to meet up and discuss medications, you know, the way forward, this, that, and next thing. And it was really a little bit distressing, I think, for a lot of people to see how affected this individual was, and then taking up time in the bipolar group as a consequence. Of course, they were going to help her because it's open to everybody. But I think also it was quite detrimental for the people within the group, seeing how agitated she was. And, you know, it's just something to be really mindful of, because people will end up in the wrong groups for help, but they're so desperate they're going everywhere to try and get help. That's just a point I wanted to make there. So, you know, there we go.
Thanks, Shona. It sounds like Alison's suggestion, I think, of taking that element into the work that's been planned around carers is a good one, and make sure that we have that focus on mental health as well as carers who are supporting people with physical health challenges. Also reminds me of the comms piece as well, and how we message out that the Health and Social Care Partnership is not services just for frail and elderly people, but it's services for everyone across our community. So there's something there about our animations and our short messages being really clear that we're there for the whole population. So I think that Shona's example is a good one to remind us of the importance of getting that balance in our communication and our messaging as well. So thank you, Shona, for raising that, and Alison will take that forward through the carers development work. Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions on the strategy before I move us to the recommendations? Shona, your hand's still up, but I think is that from previous?
I'm sorry, Luann.
That's okay. Thank you. John Tomlinson.
Yeah, I would like to see something in the minute just to acknowledge the position we've got to and the work that's been done to get us to this stage. Because I do, as I said earlier, I do think it is a step change that we have and really good foundation for the next few years.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I think we absolutely need to acknowledge that. I think we would, if there's no further questions, we want to thank the team for the work and the approach that's been taken to the consultation process over the past year. Acknowledge that it's an ambitious strategy that we're going forward with. It's taken that whole system approach that is so important, and that it's focusing on treating people as individuals, but also seeing, I suppose, seeing the importance of people's place in a family and in a community as well. So we'll absolutely make sure that that's acknowledged in the minute. Alison, did you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Luann. I just want to also thank everyone who's been involved in the development. Yeah, the team did a lot of work around about it, but we were also supported by a lot of colleagues around about this meeting. So I'd just like to record my thanks for around that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. We'll make sure that's covered in the minute too. Absolutely. Okay, so the recommendations are on page 62 of the pack. So we're being asked to approve the 3 versions of the plan, instruct the Chief Officer to publish the plans, instruct the Chief Officer to report on progress through Risk Audit and Performance Committee and Clinical Care Governance Committee, and annually via the annual performance report to the IJB. We're also agreeing to instruct the Chief Officer to submit the strategic plan to Aberdeen City Council's Strategic Commissioning Committee, to NHS Grampian Board and to Community Planning Aberdeen at the earliest opportunity. And that we also note that work is underway on a refresh of the local integrated children's services plan for the period 23 to 26, and request Aberdeen City Council's Director of Commissioning to consult with the IJB on the draft in advance of that being finalised. So we're all content with that now? Yeah, I'm seeing nodding. Well, yeah, thank you all for the questions. Go right back to Christian's point at the start about the easy to read version and how helpful that is. I've been around it from the start, but I still found the easy read version a really helpful way of just reminding this is what it's about, this is what it's for. And I'm going to just take offline and think about how we might introduce that approach or that thinking to some of our other reports. Because I think there's something in that about just distilling down to, in a nutshell, what do we mean, what's important here, and maybe that's something we can take into some of the other reports that come to the IJB. So thank you, Christian, for raising that and sparking that thought. Okay, it is now 11:32. That feels like a good time to stop for a break. We'll come back in 10 minutes at 11:42. If I can ask you to switch off your cameras and have your microphones on mute, because the recording will continue during the break, but I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Luann.
Hi, Sandy.
One of the things that went through my head, but I'm not a member, so I didn't want to interrupt the flow, with a discussion about well-being. It was interesting recently, the annual Grampian Area Partnership Forum, sort of development day, their sort of big showpiece event. They deliberately, consciously stopped for about an hour to an hour and a half over the lunchtime period and didn't continue, you know, so they started at roughly the same time as the IGB. They stopped for basically 12 till 2 and then carried on from about 2 till 4. And I guess the point about, which is why I didn't want to kind of interrupt the meeting, the point about signalling to everybody, you know, rather than bashing on through. And I thought it was an interesting point to make, because I think a lot of people probably thought we would actually be better bashing on and finishing earlier. But they made a big point of doing that. And I suppose I'm just saying that to you for reflection for future sessions, not to kind of say that in the forum per se.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. By my timings, we may finish by 1 today. Is what I'm thinking. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. See everybody coming back now. Okay, I think we'll get started on the agenda. Thanks everyone for coming back in a timely fashion. Hope you've had a leg stretch or got some caffeine. As I say, we'll take stock maybe 12:30, see where we are then, and if we need another break at that point, we can absolutely do that. But in the meantime, we will carry on with the agenda. So the next item is 5.1, which is the IGB Scheme of Governance Annual Review. Is that John? Here we go. John Forsyth, I see you've popped up on the screen. Over to you, John, to introduce this one.
Thanks, Luann. Yeah, this report comes before the IGB on an annual basis and just looks to make any changes required to the IGB scheme of governance. As the report highlights, there's really only the one change this year round that's been identified, and that's to change the IGB's code of conduct, and that's to bring it into line with the new model code of conduct, which was brought into force in December of last year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, John. And of course, we had an overview of the Code of Conduct for previous IGB members a wee while back, and then an overview as well at the induction session 2 weeks ago. So we're cited on that. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the paper we have before us just now on the revised Code of Conduct in particular? No. Okay, are people content? So the recommendation for us today is to approve the revised Code of Conduct as we have it in the papers. Are people happy with that today? Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing people nodding. Thank you. Okay, thank you, John. That's that paper dealt with for today. Next item then is 5.2, which is the annual resilience report. Is it Martin?
It is, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, so the report provides the board with the first annual assurance report on the IGB's resilience arrangements as a Category 1 responder under the Civil Contingency Act 2004. And these duties and responsibilities were confirmed by the Scottish Government in April 2021. It's worth saying that prior to the IGB becoming a Category 1 responder, there were good links with the local resilience partnership across the Grampian area already established, and the inclusion of the IGB as a Category 1 responder helped formalise these arrangements. As a Category 1 responder, the IGB has managed a number of concurrent risks this year. So during 21-22, this management of concurrency continued as the pandemic transitioned into longer-term management, and our system of organisational resilience responded to new and emerging risks. In terms of governance arrangements, the IGB have included a strategic risk on its risk register relating to the duties under the Civil Contingency Act, and the partnership have revised the terms of reference of its Civil Contingency Group to reflect the duties under the Act too, as well. and a copy of the risk register extract forms Appendix A to this report. The partnership senior managers on call remain on call 24/7 throughout the year and are responsible for assessing and managing risks during emergency response. The resilience around these senior manager on call arrangements have been enhanced by supplementing them with managers on call, and that started in January 2022. We are just currently going through a review of those arrangements, and we'll take a paper through the partnership senior leadership team in relation to those arrangements. As previously mentioned, the partnership has also responded to a number of concurrent incidents. A summary of the incidents and resulting improvements is outlined at section 3.14 to the report. It's probably worth mentioning that the resilience arrangements were fully tested in the responses to storms Arwen, Malik and Corrie. They were in November 21 and January 22, and more details on those storms and lessons learned are contained in Appendix B to the report. The two main lessons learned from those storms, and these were identified through debriefs at a national level, a Grampian level, and also from a local Aberdeen City level, were the importance of the further development of the Persons at Risk database, as well as looking at enhancing and promoting personal, household and community resilience in preparation for disruptive events. So in relation to the Person at Risk database, or PARD for short, there's two working groups have been established, one at a Grampian level through the Grampian Local Resilience Partnership, which has agreed high-level criteria of what constitutes a vulnerability. And the second group is an Aberdeen City group, but similar groups exist in the Shire and Murray, which has looked at what data sets are needed to help us identify vulnerable citizens according to the agreed criteria. So the City Working Group is currently working on some of the information governance arrangements to ensure that data can be shared, and meetings are ongoing in relation to that. The plan is to have a draft Person at Risk database in place and tested by October 2022 ahead of next winter. And in relation to community resilience, Aberdeen City Council have progressed work on this and liaised with the partnership. And that work includes liaising with community groups in the city, particularly in the areas affected during the storms. And what will be important is making sure that the Aberdeen City Care for People plan will be updated to reflect the progress in relation to community resilience. The report is here for information, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I'll open that up for questions from anyone. Certainly the last year has been one to test a resilience plan to its limit, and lots of learning taken from that. I've not seen anyone's hands up. We'll just give people a second. John Cook.
Thanks, Lan. Yeah, a good report. When you kind of think about the development of the PARD and you're combining different databases, somebody might say, well, you're just sticking two databases or three databases together. What am I right in thinking it's actually quite a considerable slug of work involved in that?
Yes, and the PARD has been something that has been spoken about for a while, and there was a lot of work that was done before the pandemic, but obviously that was paused. It's been picked up after the pandemic ahead of the storms. So yeah, lots of work for a number of years ongoing at a national level. But I think what I'd be encouraged to say is that, you know, with the Grampian approach of agreeing the criteria on vulnerability, I think that's quite clear now, and it's up to the local authority areas, including the health and social care partnerships, to look at the data sets and also use in the city council. There's a geographic information system which has already got a lot of data sets. So we're going to be using the extra data in terms of vulnerability and layering that on top of the GIS system. The GIS system has got details of community centres, schools, GP practices, etc., which will help in the immediate response, but also the recovery after such events as the storms.
Nope, thanks, that's helpful.
Thanks, John. And John Tomlinson.
Yeah, thank you for the report, Martin. So I think it gives considerable assurance in terms of the work that's been done to start to embed this and link into the local arrangements. Just interested if there's learning that's shared across health and social care partnerships, because the experience may have differed across those, and whether that you've been able to access that and draw on that as well.
Yes, so after the storms in particular, there were recovery groups set up by the Grampian Local Resilience Partnership, which had representatives of each of the 3 health and social care partnerships and local authorities and NHS around it. So there's a lot of discussion about what the lessons learned were in each area. Obviously, some areas of Grampian were more affected than others. But that's not to say that in the future there might be other areas that would be as badly affected. So yeah, certainly a lot of lessons learned, but I think highlighted in the report are those kind of 2 main areas about the development of the person at risk database and community resilience. So we're working on that, but certainly from our colleagues in the Shire, we heard the difficulties they've had and how much harder it was and more difficult for them. So I think that certainly we've reflected on that and included that in our plans moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. John, I'm not seeing anyone else's hands up, so if we're content with the report as it is, we'll go to the recommendation, which is to note the progress made in embedding IGB resilience arrangements during 21-22. We're content with that. Yeah, okay. We will note that. Thank you. 6.1 is the item that we'll take in private around supplier uplifts. So we'll do that at the end of the meeting, so we don't have to stop the recording and come back to the meeting. So we'll hold 6.1 till nearer the end of the meeting. Item 6.2 is ADP investment plans for 2022. Simon, do you want to introduce this paper?
Morning, everyone. This paper represents a plan that has been discussed and worked on via the Alcohol and Drug Partnership in Aberdeen City. Just to make members aware, Gail Beattie is the ADP chair and she's also in the call today. The majority of the funding that's come from the Scottish Government is related to their national mission for reducing drug-related harm across Scotland. The funding is largely directed by the government to specific programmes and initiatives which we are progressing. Where we have tried to reduce the risk of recruitment challenges, we've looked at skill mix and having a wide range of not just clinical, but social care and third sector providers involved to help take forward our plans. We've also used some non-recurring money to undertake some tests of change, in particular a hub to support people with fetal alcohol syndrome or parents who are coping with fetal alcohol syndrome, and a number of other initiatives that broadly support our prevention and early intervention activity in the city. So the majority of funding that's come from the government is really around service improvement, service capacity and service quality. We have used the non-recurring and the slippage funding to support infrastructure and early intervention and prevention where possible. So presenting the funding plan, the investment plan for ratification to the IGB, and happy to take any questions or queries.
Thanks, Simon, and clearly a very important area for the IGB, and one that we will have a seminar on. I think the date for that's looking likely to be September, but we'll be having a seminar on alcohol and drug partnership activities and be able to get into the detail of it more then, but we'll go to questions now. So first of all, Christian.
Yes, thanks very much, Luan. Thanks very much, Simon, for for this report, and it's nice to speak to you. A long time of not speaking to you. I just thinking, and maybe Lauren has just answered the question, that there's going to be a seminar in September. It would be great for everyone to have a better understanding of its recurring money and non-recurring money, and particularly on a timeline, the last 5 or 10 years, to know exactly where we are, because it's difficult to get papers every year which shows what the funding is without an understanding and comprehension of what the funding was, not only last year, but previous years, to know where we are and what we get in recurring and not recurring funding. So I don't know if that could be available for September for the seminar, but that would be helpful.
Yes, I have a tracker that has all the decisions that the IJB and the ADP have proposed and made over the last couple of years, and can use that in the seminar.
Thanks. That's helpful, and we can certainly put some welcome ideas on what people would like to be covered or ahead of the seminar, so we can plan well for that. So that's helpful, Christian. Thank you. John Tomlinson next.
Yeah, thank you, Luann, and thanks for the report, Simon. Clearly, this is about the interventions, the projects, so the kind of inputs. But could you, just for full assurance on this, just say a bit about the modelling or whatever which sits behind this in terms of the potential impact of this? Presumably, these have been selected to have the desired impact. What could you just say a bit about the potential impact that you're expecting from this?
So what our aspiration is in terms of service provision is that services are more easily accessible to people, and that we have services that will actively go out into the community and engage with people directly. So during COVID, we have, or in particular Alcohol and Drugs Action, our third sector provider, have developed ways of going out into the community and delivering services to people's doorstep and engaging with the most vulnerable people. We have established learning reviews from looking at drug-related deaths, and have a better understanding and a growing understanding of the complexity of the system that people have to navigate to access help and support. So what we're aiming to do is push our services much more into the community and reduce barriers to access, to allow us to do that and provide things like long-acting buprenorphine, same-day prescribing, and much more sort of skill mix in terms of the range of wraparound support that's available to people. Will increase the capacity in our services by using third sector providers, and we will increase the psychological based support to people and family support as well. So that's largely around the service provision, and it would allow us to, we're anticipating around 400 additional people in treatment, but trying to reach the most vulnerable at the same time.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. So in due course, there'll be a report on those outcomes or those shifts in the data. Yeah, okay,
we have a number of improvement projects through community planning, which relate to all of the ADP sort of aspirations and improvements that we want to make. The MAT Standards programme, which is a substantial piece of work, is also based on the improvement methodology, and through using some of the non-recurring money, we're going to increase the improvement support available to be able to report on the MAT standards in the same way that improvements are reported through community planning. So there will be publicly accessible charts that show improvements as we invest the funding.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. That's helpful.
Thanks, John. Alison Murray. Alison, we're not hearing you at the moment. I don't know if it's Alison's having connection issues.
No, sorry, I've just come back. I lost my mouse. My mouse pointer disappeared. I was just wanting to say it's great to hear about the fecal alcohol spectrum disorder FASD support hubs. I run a support parent carer support group, and we've got about 900 members in our group, Parents Online, and we have a good number with children with FASD, though they tend to all be adoptive parents. And I was just wondering how easy it is to get natural parents to join these groups, because obviously there is that link there with the condition, you know, the development of the condition, and I fear that although we'd welcome anybody in our group without sort of judgment, there is obviously, for some, there must be a stigma attached to having children who are affected by FASD and actually accessing services.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the investment. There is a national fetal alcohol syndrome hub, and we would look to have them deliver a local hub that's available to the public and professionals. I guess the whole purpose of that is really to try and promote awareness of the spectrum and to reduce stigma by providing support. And I guess that stigma can be felt not just by natural parents who often have very complex multiple needs, but also that stigma can manifest itself in our professional services. So I guess by having something there that is visible and tangible, we'll hopefully engage people, and by doing that we can attempt to reduce stigma and raise awareness, and a significant sort of prevention programme that can go along with that.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. And Simon, am I right in thinking that the person that, well, one of the people driving this has been someone from lived experience around fetal alcohol disorder, who's really quite an inspiring person and will continue to be around that as well?
Yes, absolutely. She's been a driving force behind this.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions or comments from people. Just on John's point as well about the reporting, this will come through the leadership team objectives as well, won't it, for the IGB? So it's not something that sits separate, but it's on the dashboard that that we will have oversight of as an IGB. Is that right, Simon? Can you confirm that as well?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you. Right, so I'm not seeing any new hands up. We'll go to the recommendations. There's a big long list of them. I'm not going to go through them individually, but they are on page 217 to 218 of the plan. And we'll also note that we're having a seminar with date to be confirmed, and maybe note in the minute if people have questions or things that you want to explore a bit further, if you can email Simon, is fine for it to come directly to you so that you can get a sense of how to plan for the seminar. So emails to Simon with any questions or areas that you want to understand a bit more about ahead of the seminar would be helpful. Okay, so I'm not seeing any further questions, so we're happy to agree the recommendations on 217, 218 of the pack. Yes. Yep, thumbs up there from Martin. Yep. Thank you. Great. Okay, thank you, Simon. Thanks very much for that report. Okay, so we'll now move on to item 6.3, dual sensory impairment service. So this is a report where a part of it is exempt and it contains financial information, but I'm keen that we have as much of our discussion as possible in public. If you want to specifically ask about the finances, and that's pertinent to agree in the recommendation, if you let us know, and we can go into a private session for that. But happy to open that up. Who's introducing this? Would this be Neil?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Neil. Do you want to introduce this one for us first?
I shall tiptoe my way through this for you, Luann, as best I can.
Thank you.
Yeah. So some additional funding has become available for sensory services to enhance those following the tender that was completed and the contract issued on 1st of October 2021. A portion of this funding then we would like to bolster the services provided by the winner of the tender, and that would help us to reduce the waiting lists, and kind of goes back to what has been spoken about a number of times during the meeting today about meeting the needs as we come out of COVID and making sure we've got those enhanced services ready to go for the people in our communities. So on that basis, we're asking for a direct award plan to enhance the services for the social worker and the rehab worker, which to enhance the services. And I'm sure Claire Wilson, who's in the call here, will be able to make it sound a bit more social worky. Claire, challenge for you.
Thanks. I'll try and sound social worky. As Neil says, we have received additional funding to increase the capacity in adult social work. The North East Sensory Services on our behalf delivered statutory social work services to those with sensory impairment. Throughout the pandemic, they have continued to work, as all of social work has, on those with high needs and priority needs. There is more demand on their services just now. There is quite a large waiting list, and I think they give such crucial support to people with sensory impairment, not only to those, but to their carers and their families. By increasing the capacity, it means that we can do more of the early intervention prevention to those who are referred to the service, and the rehabilitation is also a really important benefit. They only have a part-time rehab worker. Putting that to a full-time equivalent really allows that people to be more independent for longer in the community, and they do fantastic work working with aids and adaptations and really keeping people as independent as possible and reducing the need for care. So that's just to add that in. And just to say, it's not just adults. They work with a lot of young people. They have a lot of young people's groups. So it's young people and adults that they provide services for. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Neil, do you want to come back in? Oh, not hearing you, Neil.
Apologies, Chair. Just to add that the contract that was tendered expires at the end of September 2024. There are 2 potential extension years to that contract, and any decisions on increasing this additional part of the service would have to be made once the whole reviewing and well, just seeing where we are at that time before we enact any of those 2 extension years, and this particular addition to the service would need to be considered at the same time. We just can't do it for the extension years when we don't know that the extension years are going to be taken up. If that makes sense, sorry.
Yep, thank you, Neil. So before we go to the recommendations for approving this, does anyone have any questions or anything you want to find out a bit more about? No, okay. Okay, we will go to then page 236 on the pack, where the recommendations are that we approve the expenditure for this as an Appendix A. We approve the expenditure set out in the business case, Appendix B, and we make the direction attached, Appendix C, and instruct the Chief Officer to issue the direction to Aberdeen City Council. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Neil, for bringing that, and Claire also. I think you can take as evidence of a thorough report that you've provided that there weren't any questions on it. So yeah, well done, and yeah, great work being done by the North East Sensory Services. Fantastic. Okay, we'll now move on to our next item on the agenda today, which is item 6.4, Project Search. Martin, are you introducing this paper?
Yeah, I am, Chair. So the report in front of the board outlines the proposals to fund young people through Project Search as part of the overall Partnerships Workforce Plan and commitment to developing the young workforce. Project Search is a licensed programme of support for young people with additional needs to gain skills for employment. The project typically is for young people with learning difficulties disabilities or autistic spectrum conditions. The project delivers classroom-based qualifications, job coaching and placement within different job settings to support the development of skills. Given that the partnership's working on a new workforce plan and that part of the plan will include the importance of working with and developing the young workforce to attract them into a career in health and social care, as well as acknowledging that the project has a preventative element, which would mean that the young people will be provided with life skills, which will mean that they are less reliant on partnership services in the future. Further discussions have been held at the senior leadership team level around supporting the project. The report outlines the cost of funding 6 young people through the project is £40,000. And given the strategic risk related to the partnership workforce, it is proposed that Project Search be one of a number of employability opportunities available to young people, as well as helping the partnership attract the next generation of health and social care workers. The report also proposes that the partnership explore becoming a host organisation under Project Search and work with partners such as NHS Grampian, Bonacore Care and Aberdeen City Council to further promote the opportunities for young people to work in health and social care. The recommendations are on page 243 and 244, and I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Martin Gregg.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really welcome and quite an exciting report. It's really good to see reaching out to offer support training to such a wide diversity of people. But I wondered, is there scope for expansion of this Project Search? 6 is quite a modest number. There's mention of the criteria of eligibility being quite restrictive, but I would have thought that there was the opportunity to involve more people. Is that the case? Just
Martin, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, as Councillor Gregg says, the criteria is relatively strict. However, as it says in the report, this would be one of a number of opportunities to attract the next generation of young people into a career of health and social care. So I think if it was taken through the board today and approved, then certainly we could be looking at referencing that in the workforce plan and seeing what the board wanted to do moving forward. I'm liaising closely with colleagues in the employability and skills team in the council who have had experience in taking young people through this project. So I think it's maybe tentative steps at the moment, but it's something that if the board were keen to support moving forward, then that's what we could do.
If I could just come back very briefly, I just feel that it's that we're looking at relatively modest amounts of resources being deployed, being invested in really worthwhile quality training opportunities. So I personally would be very much in support of finding ways of developing and expanding these learning and vocational life chances for young people, and I just hope that can be done in some way in the future. I mean, I realise that it is essential to provide quality opportunities, quality training, and that's not always easy. But this is really positive and really gives a lot of encouragement. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Martin. And if I can say that I agree with you, I think that, and it's maybe widening who we would think about. When I read this, I thought of care experienced young people and lots of different groups of young people who could benefit from a scheme like this. And I know there's already work streams in place, so maybe just seeing it come through our workforce plan about what the pathways are already and the potential to extend them would be a helpful thing for us to see coming through. Sandra, did you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Luan, it was just to say just exactly the point you've said. We're strongly linked into developing the young workforce with modern apprenticeships, the mentorship scheme, particularly with our local secondary schools and things. So we do have quite a broad range. This is one particular aspect here, Councillor Gregg, but I think it might well be worth a conversation, even just at some point, if you're interested, just with Martin, just to give you an outline of the broader range and how we link in with ACC and link in with our NHS colleagues to support modern apprenticeships. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a helpful action to take offline for both Martins to have a conversation. That sounds good. Thank you. John Tomlinson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this project and actually had some involvement with them in the past, but not currently, so there's no declaration to make. But I do know the model that they had previously, so my questions are about sustainability of this. In the past, the funding through the city and Aberdeenshire needed to both come through for the core costs to be met and therefore for it to be sustainable. So that's one question, which is, are we understanding that the Aberdeenshire part of this is in place along with what we would be approving today? And does that combined provide for sustainability? So that's one question. The second question is, it used to operate into a framework that was national, and is that framework still there, or is this now our own scheme locally? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Martin?
I think in relation to the first question about the sustainability of funding, I'm happy to go back to colleagues in the council just to get that confirmation, John, just through the City Council to just kind of explore that a wee bit further if that was okay. I'm happy to get a message around the IJB in relation to that. And similarly, I think in the national framework, I would like to be checking, as I said, the City Council colleagues have got a bit more experience in dealing with this project, so I'm happy to have those conversations with them and get a message around the IJB members just to confirm that.
Yeah, John, did you want to come in? Are you happy with that?
Well, I'm happy with it, but it does mean if we're putting our money forward, we want to make sure that the model that it's based on is. So I would be thinking if we probably would be seeking to approve this subject to getting that confirmation.
Yeah. So we can amend the recommendation to say, well, we're agreeing the recommendation subject to confirmation of the sustainability element and whether the Aberdeenshire part is in place so that this will go ahead. We can agree the recommendations on that basis. Are you happy with that, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Martin can advise us by email of the outcome of that, of those two questions. Okay, thank you. Kim.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested really, it's been running since 2013 according to the paper, and I'm just interested in the history, I guess not into too much detail, but around the success of these youngsters that have gone through the programme. And just for clarity, I wanted to check the focus around health and social care partnership this time. Is that a new thing for this intake, or that the funding is going towards? Prior to that was the focus elsewhere in employability in other sectors? Because it sounds like it's a new focus.
So I could answer that. So my understanding is that the partnership had been involved previously in the project. So there is some experience there, but I think with the conversations we've had at the senior leadership team linking into the workforce plan, it was decided to bring the report in front of the IJB to see if we could reignite those kind of the initiative. So yes, we have been involved in the past.
And do we have any information on how successful it's been in the past? I don't know if we've had 6 people every year since 2013 or if the numbers have grown, but just I'm interested in, I think it's a really good initiative, but just, I'm hoping that there's been success with those that have gone through the programme.
Sandra's maybe want to come in. Sandra?
Yeah, Martin, are you happy for me to just come in? Just to say that I think there has been quite a deep review that's been undertaken in this, Kim. So I think there was questions as to what the value and what the accessibility criteria was, and it was quite a rigid access criteria, if you like. So this new fund, moving forward with this, we've addressed some of those issues, and the team have been working around that to make sure that this is giving us appropriate value, appropriate access for people, and being able to help us move that forward. So it's very good comments that you make, and those are things that have been taken into consideration as we're moving forward from our past learning.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Thanks, Kim, for that question. Alison Murray.
Yes, we see quite a few people who are interested in it, but I don't know how many from our groups go on to apply for it. I was similar to Kim. I was wondering how many people actually get jobs at the end of the day, and whether they actually can maintain themselves in those jobs, or whether this is something you go through for 9 months and then you're back. You're still not, while it's great and it does provide them with some skills and extra life skills, but whether it actually gets them into sustainable employment, because these are groups who have very low employment otherwise.
Thanks, Alison. Sandra?
Yeah, and I think just really to reiterate my question to Kim, I think that's exactly the same, Alison, that we were, there has been a firm review of the outcomes and the outputs in relation to this, and how we're now approaching it, a reviewed sense of the SLA and how things have started to move forward. So I think I'm not sure that in the past we were able to really answer some of those questions, so that's why there's been a bit more in-depth work that's been taken forward, so that we're able to have a better application understanding.
So, all right, so we're not sure at the moment the long term, but we hope we will be. Yeah, that's good. Yes, I had another question about recruitment. It was saying it was difficult to find the groups. To what extent is this? Is it schools putting people forward, or how do people find out about it and get put forward for it?
Martin?
Yeah, so again, I think utilising the experience of colleagues in the council, we'll be exploring that in further detail. But it's really, I think it was just to try and get the consideration of the board today on that. But we can certainly get that answer to you.
It sounds like, Alison, from your perspective, you might be interested to promote it. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Well, absolutely. Oh, we already do.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think it's people making that step to thinking this is appropriate for me, and it's something I'm interested in, and it's something which might help me, particularly if they're a group who've had difficulties with schools and things like that on the way through, and that it can be. Yes, it can be that it fits in with that transition, the child to adult transition and all of that arrangements, and it perhaps needs to be slotted more firmly in there as an option in transition planning. Yeah.
I see Graham's hands up. I wondered, Graham, did you want to come in on this point about where we're, recruitment of the young people for this particular programme, or is yours?
Yeah, I did. So it will be very much as Alison has just described. It will be, this is about broadening our curricular offer to our young people who are in their upper stages of school, to see this as being broader, and recognising that there are a number of young people who will struggle with school to engage with school. So these young people will also, this will be an option for them to consider as well, rather than actually attending school. Some of these activities will also just broaden the offer of education in its broadest sense for them as well. So it will be very much taken in partnership with our schools going forward. So just wanted to give that assurance to Alison and the board.
Thanks, Graham. That's helpful. Christian.
Yeah, if I may, on this feedback that we would receive, I would like to see something about, of course, the recruitment and the possibility of employment, but like every employee as well, retention. How much are we doing for regarding retention of any of our employees, and them included? So making sure that we consider all our employees the same way, not only through recruitment and employment, but as well through retention.
Okay, thanks, Christian. So Martin, something for noting for the further information, or is that something you want to say something about just now?
I think maybe just to take away and consider, I've had a message about the body, the national body. So it is a national body, TFN UK, which is a commissioning charity working to raise money for to help young people. So my understanding is that's the national body that would be involved in this project.
Okay, thanks, Martin. And John Tomlinson.
Yeah, just given where the conversation's gone, there was previously for the project tracking of the graduates' progress into employment or not. So that data does sit there, and that was one of the challenges, I think, from an operational point of view, of was there enough money or were the skills in the team to there were the skills to take them to graduation, but were there the skills and the capacity to help take them into employment? So I think that would be helpful to see in the review, Martin. So this refresh is very welcome, but if that issue is being addressed specifically, because that was the kind of nub where the thing was foundering somewhat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So what I'm hearing then, just for clarity, and folk can correct me if I've not got this right. So we're content to agree the recommendations subject to further information being confirmed around the sustainability of our funding and whether it's dependent on Aberdeenshire's element of funding as well or not. And secondly, to have more information on how people will be supported into employment and retained in employment once they've gone through the training programme. That's the key parts that we're interested in. Yeah, are people happy with that as the two bits that we're looking for? And that'll be sent round by email so that we can get that further assurance and agree the recommendations. But I think as well, as much as we're asking these questions, it's a really exciting piece of work, and we're keen to support it and maybe see how it can be developed more widely as well. So thanks for bringing this to us today, Martin. Very exciting. Good. Okay, so we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Rubislaw Park Nursing Home. Now, this also has a part of the paper which is exempt, which is just the finance bit. But again, I'm keen that we take this as much in public as we can. Is it James that's going to introduce this paper for us today?
Yes, it is, Chair. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. The paper comes before the IJB for approval for a 5-month extension to the Rubislaw Park Nursing Home end-of-life beds contract. The recommendation in the paper is to extend the contract for the additional 5-month period, which will allow for a full evaluation to be completed. And this will ensure we capture as much meaningful information as we can to inform future commissioning arrangements. And then this will be brought back to the IJB following that from its recommendation within the evaluation. Open up to any questions.
Thank you, James. I'll just wait, give folk a minute to see if any hands come up for questions. Yeah, I see John Cook.
Thanks, Lan. Yeah, given that we're only extending for 5 months, which I totally get, you want to give a decent time period to evaluate rather than just doing something on a very short time scale. So that makes sense to me. But would I be right in thinking the fact that we're looking to extend for 5 months, we think it's doing well, it's working as it should? If it was all going horribly wrong, you presumably wouldn't be suggesting a 5-month extension. Am I putting words in your mouth there, or?
No, you would be correct there. Definitely. The service at present is the feedback that we have so far is going very well, and it's providing patients and members of the community with good respite in terms of the end-of-life care and crisis management, etc., for carers, for family, friends, etc. So yes, it is going well at the moment.
Thanks.
I see Neil and Jason both have put their hands up. I don't know which order. Well, just go with Neil first. I think you were first, Neil.
Thank you. Just to back up what James was saying there, I think this was
an initiative that a really good initiative that I think Sandra and Anne Mackenzie had kind of put in place during the COVID period, which has worked out really, really well. And I think it's important we do this bit of work now just to before we make any further decision and use any more funds to make sure that it's exactly what we want. But so far, Councillor Cook, it's been an outstanding bit of work for sure.
Thanks, Neil. And Jason.
Yeah, and just to build on that and to give a couple of specific examples. So in the initial formation of that plan, that was very much about providing a community step-up response for patients that are service users, citizens in an end-of-life setting as an alternative to coming into hospital. But part of the learning that we've understood as we went through that is the option to consider also patients who have presented at the front door, perhaps directly with family members, and getting to that level assessment, enabling a step into those beds from places like the acute medical investigations assessment unit, or indeed Ward 102 as a frailty unit. So that has helped in terms of flow, in terms of getting people to a more homely environment, if that's in line with the kind of choice of the service user, citizen, and indeed family member. So I think it's as well evaluating, but also understanding the optimal utilisation we can make of that capacity to get the right care in the right place at the right time and aid system flow kind of pressures as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I see Fiona's got her hand up. Fiona, do you want to add on that question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Jason probably stole my thunder a little bit, just to say that it has been very positive feedback from family members and from the people who have needed the actual care. And it certainly has improved the services from the community nursing. That was one of the reasons. It was to give a bit of added resilience to community nursing services, and this opportunity has definitely given that. So thank you for the opportunity, and the extension would be very welcome by the community nursing teams. Thanks.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, John, for that question. It's helpful to get that broader sense of how it's gone so far. Caroline, did you want to come in on this point? Martin, I'm aware you're patiently waiting, but Caroline, do you want to add to what's been said?
Just more positive feedback with my GP hat on. Colleagues are certainly welcoming the option to have their patients looked after in a more homely environment and not requiring admission, and also the GPs have the opportunity to retain responsibility for the patients when they're in that nursing home setting. So lots of positive comments back from GP colleagues.
Thanks, Caroline. So yeah, really positive feedback across the system, really, for what's been put in place. That's good to hear. Martin, your question.
Yeah, thanks. It's really good to hear the positive feedback about the about this use of Rubislaw Park care home. It's a care home that I know well, and I wondered, given the relative success so far, is there potential for making these arrangements long term or permanent? Has that been thought about?
Thank you very much for your question. I think it's something that's following the recommendation within the evaluation, we'll certainly look at. But I believe there is the appetite from both the home and the staff for that to continue going forward, definitely.
Thanks, Martin. Neil?
Totally agree with what James is saying there. A bit also worth adding that if it does become permanent, we may just need to also consider the wider marketplace and not do anything that would be deemed unfair and not equitable to the marketplace. But certainly that's not to put a downer on this at all, Councillor Gregg. It's been very good, as people have said.
Can I come back?
Sure.
Could you just expand on the meaning of the marketplace? I'm not clear.
Oh, sorry.
On that.
Yeah, no, sorry. I think if we were to go do this permanently, it would be worth going out to all the providers who could potentially offer the same service, and make sure that everybody gets a chance to either bid or to at least note interest in that, so that we don't sit here in 6 months' time with 3 or 4 providers issuing complaints and challenges to any decision we make, and to be fair to the wider community.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for that question, Martin. I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I'm going to move to the recommendations that we're being asked to. Oh, John Cook. Sorry, John.
Sorry, yeah, just on the back of the question that Martin asked and the answer to it, in terms of going out to the wider marketplace, it wouldn't necessarily be a case of go with the lowest cost provider. It would be very much quality as well, just to confirm that.
Yeah, just yeah, let me be quite clear so I can answer this question for all the future questions, John, in that it's our policy, certainly in my team, that we rarely go above 20% in terms of cost and 80% in terms of quality. It's all about quality, ethical commissioning. We have to make sure that we follow the national lead, but also our own. We've been doing it for years. You know, it's all about quality. We generally know how much money we don't have, so we're quite clear there. It's about quality.
Thanks, Neil.
That was the answer I was expecting, but I just thought it would be quite handy just to get it confirmed for the recording.
Yeah.
Sandra, do you want to come in too?
Yeah, just really as well, I think that one of the key things our shared commissioning approach with and joint commissioning with Aberdeen City Council is definitely put there, and in our commissioning, in the principles of our commissioning, I think is laid out in the strategic plan are fundamentally important. I think we've got some really our methods within health and social care of how we're commissioning services and what the outcomes that we have are quite ahead of the rest of Scotland in a lot of areas, and I think they really sit with the Feely report, so can give a lot of assurance, John, that that's absolutely where we're going. Is that key focus for us is about outcomes for people, because we understand that racing to the bottom for cost is not, you know, we've all learned from that, so just some assurance on that.
Thanks, Sandra. Really good to have that reminder. Very important. Thanks, John, for that question. So we will now move to the recommendations, which are on page 252. Excuse me while I swallow a fly. So we're being asked to approve the direct award. I'm not going to read it word by word, but approve the direct award, approve the expenditure as set out in the business case, and make the direction as attached in Appendix C, all on page 252. We're all content to do that, and we'll hear in due course as to the outcome of the evaluation work that's ongoing. Yeah, content. Good. I see people nodding, so we'll take that as approved. Thank you all for that. Okay, I think we're now moving on to our final item. I think given the time, if people are content, we'll carry on and do our final item without having another break, if that's okay with folks. Yeah, okay. So we have now concluded all the business that we have that's to be done in our public part of the meeting. You'll note 9.1, the date of the next workshops that we have coming up are the 2C and Primary Care workshop 13th of July, a risk workshop on 15th of August, and the next IJB is on the 30th of August. So that concludes our public part of the meeting, and we'll now switch off the recording.